live again. Matt and I are kind of mixing it up, going to Monday evenings. I don't know if we're going to do that permanently, but it's fun because we like doing live shows because we get to have you guys involved, and it's fun to, kind of, I don't know, chat back and forth with each other, but also to have you here as well. And it's also hard, Matt and I typically, before we were always recording on Sunday evenings, and that's just kind of tough. It's one of those things. Sometimes it works, and sometimes, you get stuck doing Sunday things with your family, which is, I suppose, a higher priority than podcasting. but yeah, we want to talk a little bit. Matt doesn't know a lot about what's going on with Lifesite News. We don't have to talk too much about it, but yeah, it's just kind of insanity going on over there. But and I find it interesting and kind of gossip worthy, I suppose. but I guess first off, Matt, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good, Kev. I'm good. Actually, it's funny because I've seen a lot of the life. Oh, I hit my microphone. Hang on. I've seen a lot of the Lifesite things go on the timeline, and more and more, I don't know if this is a bad thing or not, but like I have found myself, I guess you can say, not less interested, but not as intrigued as by a lot of the things that are going on that I feel like I used to. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad. Maybe it's a good thing in terms of detachment a little bit, because I used to follow these things like really, really closely, but now I more so pick and choose, and I'm a bit more selective of the content and the material that I kind of like digest, I guess you can say would be a good word. So like I said before we came on, you're going to have to certainly lead this one. But I remember, I believe actually Lifesite News blocked me on Twitter over a year ago. So I'm not sure what I did or may have done, but I believe you had Steve Knox on the show. Is that correct? I think
Stephen Cox, yeah, he's
Cox, yeah.
Oh, that is on a couple times now, and hopefully will again in the future. He's doing his own thing over at Cox News. Recommend
which is newly founded, right?
Yeah, newly founded. I think he's already gotten pretty good support, which is cool. He is a guy who's certainly on his way to truth, and someone who's looking for truth. And I think that's something that I think we all need to certainly respect and try to help him out the best we can. And I think that's something with John Henry Westen. I've said that for a long time now, that he seems like a guy who is more willing to actually look for truth than a lot of people out there, and is not just going to toe the line. And I think that's why he got booted. I mean, that's what's pretty interesting about all of this, that he got kicked out from the company that he founded. And then the co-founder, I don't remember his name, came out afterwards and was just like, yeah, I pretty much, John Henry Westen was hiring a bunch of sedevacantists, and he's just this super traditionalist guy, and this is why we couldn't have him on anymore. And then just I don't know, 2 days ago or something, John Henry Westen was what do you call it? And he was put back as the CEO because the way they terminated him
reinstated.
was,
sure,
that's the word, reinstated. He was
it
was illegal how they did it, I suppose. So he's back.
So
for now.
I'm just asking. So the cause of his dismissal was he was referencing sedevacantist men publications.
No, he has sedevacantists on payroll.
Oh.
Yeah. So which is true. And, and that's what I think. I didn't know that. Someone mentioned this. Like, can you imagine that? If the co-founder had come out and said, and he has several Jews on the payroll, or and several Muslims on the payroll, and so we can't have him anymore. But of course, you could never say that. But of course, that the real bad people are the sedevacantists. They're the ones.
Oh, I didn't realize.
How dare you hire someone like that?
And like you said, it's funny how, of course, it would be anybody else. There wouldn't be a problem with it. I mean, look at the Daily Wire. Look at the plethora of people that they have on the payroll there. Of course, Ben Shapiro being one of them. And, they're allowed to be ecumenical in all these ways, but you cannot be ecumenical to sedevacantists. That should have been his defense, quite honestly. It's a very ecumenical, posting. So it is, I can't even imagine, though, founding a company and putting your life's effort and time and talents and just energy into this, only to be voted out by a board that you were told you had to create. because I would assume that's what he was told to do. He probably is CEO. He probably had a generated an advisory board with some sort of delegation of control or power in the organization, and they ousted him. A lot of politics
Well, and
in
ousted him
these things.
without he wasn't even allowed to say goodbye. They just pretty much like, hey, by the way, we voted and you're gone. And apparently, again, how
And
they
they all
did it
supported
was
his
not.
ousting.
Yeah, and it was inappropriate. Exactly.
Yeah.
So he's back in. I don't know how long that's going to last. My guess is he will either leave or be fired again. I don't really know, but it's really interesting. And I think that the bigger picture is what I find more fascinating is that idea of the gatekeepers, the gatekeepers of traditional Catholic media, quote unquote traditional Catholic media, and how careful they've been with, since Leo has been elected as the supposed Pope. And I think it's fascinating to see which direction people have gone. Most of them have just played it super safe. I mean, Taylor Marshall's a great example, just kind of, kissing the feet of the new Pope. And I think that John Henry Westen was just one who didn't. And Stephen Cox was another one. I mean, the day after the election, Stephen Cox came on this show or on this podcast, which is, it's not a huge podcast, but it's big enough that, people know it and they know it to be sedevacantist. And I think that, the gatekeepers of, one of the biggest, Catholic media productions out there, one of the biggest, conservative ones, Lifesite News, they're just like, hey, this is too far. And that's pretty interesting, I think.
It made me think too, when you were saying there how much of a reset Bergoglio's death truly was, and how unwilling people are to once again look at the actual doctrines and look at the actual teachings imposed by him. It seems to have just gone by the wayside, because you said this on a few shows ago, Kev, where Bergoglio was truly like, bring in the dancing witches. He was really that bad.
Yeah.
And Prevost is a bit more of that middle ground Novus Ordo guy, which doesn't ultimately in the end doesn't look nearly as bad as anything Bergoglio put on. And so they're finding this refreshment in him that truly is not anything Catholic at all. In fact, I have said numerous times there's not a Catholic bone in his body. A lot of the things that he says are so anti-Catholic and so out of place theologically, but they found this reset in him. The great big monster is gone. We can now have him in the corner in case we need him. We're not hyper papalist or anything, but he is there and all is well. And you notice that apparently here with what's going on with Lifesite, their new vicar of Christ is on their chair, and they got the reset that they wanted, and now we can focus on just being Catholic again. Have you noticed there's not really much talk about a lot of the things that Prevost has done? Granted, it's quite early,
Yeah.
But some issues that have come up that are very, very concerning don't make headlines. Bergoglio was a great headline maker. He loved the media. He loved the press. For someone who said we need to really spend more time contemplating and in silence, he loved to talk. He loved the cameras. He loved the microphones. He loved the interviews. He loved the attention. Leo the 14th doesn't seem to be as much of that sort of character. So you see the dynamic play out differently, and I think people are reacting differently to his reign. And apparently, as you noted there, it's played out in Lifesite with their organization, certainly. And I feel like there are a few, as you said, Taylor Marshall was another one who's kind of like, all right, everything is well and good now. We're Gallicanists. I don't even know if they know that, but they're, as they said, the Pope, he's there, he's in their corner. That's all we need in case we ever need him. But the church can now breathe on its own again, which of course is quite silly when you can compare all of that to the traditional teachings of the papacy and the church. But what was Stephen Cox's a few of his points that he made to you? I'm not familiar with the interview, so I don't even know his positions. He's been very friendly to me on Twitter and whatnot. Agreed with several points that I made, retweeted some of my content. But I do not know where he stands.
He is very friendly and open to sedevacantism. He's working his way towards it. He's not willing to yet say he is a sedevacantist, but I think he's very close. I think he's at a point where he certainly sees all the issues and is honestly and openly approaching that. And I think that that's something that I feel pretty good that he will come to that, eventually, kind of like a Louis Verrecchio, where you just say, hey, okay, yeah, this just can't be. And I think that's it's just so, I respect that so much, because again, it's like someone like Taylor Marshall, like a lot of these guys who know all of the issues. They know. I mean, Taylor Marshall, and again, I don't want to just drag his name through the mud. He seems like a nice enough guy and whatnot, but he talks about these issues. He talks about how there are dogmatic problems, and there are even, I don't know if he'd ever use the word, but there are heresies coming from Vatican II, and he knows all of this, and he's discussed it in depth, and then he just goes and says, okay, yeah, because the new pope dresses a little nicer, I'm just gonna kiss his feet, and I guess in a way though, Matt, and I'm sure you would agree with me here. I suppose if you have a young pope, pretty young, and you're like, okay, it's going to be decades probably. At least they're not just like, yeah, we're just going to recognize and resist this for another 20 years, like someone like Michael Matt, which is that's another topic. But I don't know if you have any comments on that. Since you kind of come from that background for a few years as an R&R.
It made me think when you were sharing that. It made me think of the very long journey that I had, and I know I've talked about it with you before, and I know we even did that hours long interview where I shared all of that. I'm not sure why anybody cared, but very nice of them. But where I shared a lot of that, and just recently, maybe a month or so ago, I wrote down my, I guess you can say, not my journey, but more so like my opinions and my thoughts on sedevacantists as time has gone by. And there was a point, and I really sat there and sat with myself and sat with my thoughts and tried to recollect where I was and what I was doing as I faced a lot of these realities. And there was a point where I think Stephen might be at now, where I said, I don't agree with them, but they ought to be heard. And what they say for good reason. I very, very clearly remember that being a point in my, I guess you can call it, conversion, where I was nowhere near as dismissive towards you all as I once was. Quite the opposite, where what you said I paid very close attention to. And I found oftentimes in that journey there that it was often you all who were very well catechized. You knew what you were talking about. And someone as myself who was actually genuinely seeking the truth and genuinely pursuing the Catholic religion, all what you said was very Catholic. It seemed very authentic and well grounded and true and well cited and well resourced. And you forced me to pay attention because it wasn't just random talking points. So I certainly empathize with men of goodwill who are finding themselves in this position now where they're faced with these sort of, this could very well be. And it's great to see people make that journey, and I encourage people who are there to make that final step, because I think there's always that little bit of hesitation, I think, for different people for various reasons. One of mine at the time made me feel almost as if I was leaving the church, in air quotes there. I felt a little bit of hesitation because someone who reads and studies, outside of the church, there's no salvation. What step am I making here? So I get how there is some anxiety involved in the decision for people who are not cradle sedes, but of course, I encourage those people to make that step, because ultimately, if you apply the Vatican II teachings to the situation, you're safe anyway. It's quite ironic how it all actually works out. So yeah,
it's I
see some of the comments too, by the way.
There's some good points. Yeah, good comments. Yeah, and I want to also say real quick that I watched a short video from Michael Matt the other day, and he also commented that he says that, I don't remember the exact quote, but something like, some of the sedevacantists have good arguments, and they're just trying to be Catholics, etc. One of the most nice things I've heard him say about it, and I think he was also actually responding to one of our tweets. He didn't mention us, but he was saying that people are calling him a fence sitter, and he's like, "Yep, that was me." So let's get to these comments. This one's from my dad. This is a good one. I think Prevost's intolerance toward resistance may end up being a greater gift to sedes than Francis's flamboyant apostasy, which is it's probably true. I mean, it's an interesting thing as we go along. I think we're seeing that Prevost he's following along in the footsteps of Bergoglio in every way, except for he's not a pagan and he's not flamboyant. I think that's absolutely true.
I actually I'm reading Matt W's comment here, and it's quite funny because just recently on Mario's Novus Ordo Watches Tradcast, he talked about this. One of the things that Prevost recently said was ecumenism of blood, which of course is a heresy, that you can just die in the name of anything and be saved. And the SSPX responded to that, saying that these words chosen by him were sort of unfortunate or misguided. And that would not have been the response of Archbishop Lefebvre or the original, I guess you can call it. What was his name? Father Bolduc, maybe. I forget the Superior General. I'm blanking on the name at the time. It's on the tip of my tongue. But you can tell that they're being nice, and they're being nice on purpose because they certainly need bishops. They lost two, and they're down to who now? Filet and wow, I have a very poor memory. Tissier, there you go. Tissier de Valeria, there you go. They're down to that, and so you can tell that like they're being quite friendly or nice and empathetic, I guess, a bit towards Leo, because they do need that. They need them. I don't know. I disagree with the comment there that the SSPX will do it on their own. I think they have moved so conciliar that they will find their friends in Burke, Strickland, and others. Maybe Vigano, I don't know, but conservative Novus Ordites. They have really changed the direction that I thought that I was joining. They have done recent pieces on the new rite of ordination, on the new mass, all of these things that they were very hardline against. They have certainly warmed up to it. It's one of the reasons why, people may know this, but it's one of the reasons why I moved away from the society, because all of the things that I thought I was avoiding was now being welcome into them.
Yeah.
And that was very upsetting for me.
Yeah, and I think you can have plenty of criticisms for Archbishop Lefebvre, though I tend to not. I think he lived in a very hard time, and yes, I wish he had made some decisions that he differently, but you kind of easy to judge from here. But I think you're totally right that the SSPX of today is not the same as that founded by Archbishop Lefebvre, and I think that's. And I think again, it so much of it comes down to smells and bells, and I hope there are more and more people who just somehow understand that is just not enough. That you find people like Stephen Cox, people look to him as a truth teller, and they're like, hey, here's a guy who's just trying to tell us as it is, and as it, as what is the truth. And then when he, God willing, finds that, hey, okay, nope, this can't be the Catholic Church, then people will come and follow the truth tellers. I mean, and I hope that's what happens, rather than people would just say, oh, great, he's wearing the proper clothes, so he must be the Pope. And I guess we'll see.
You have to remember, too, I see Chris's question here, and I'll get to that in a minute, but you have to remember, too, that the society was allowed to be a lot more vocal on these issues, in my opinion, under John Paul II, because John Paul II was a validly ordained bishop. You still had holy orders in the Catholic or in the Novus Ordo hierarchy. He was a validly consecrated bishop. He could make priests. He could do all of these things. Their position conveniently changed with the election of Ratzinger, who was a validly ordained priest, but not a validly consecrated bishop. So then all of a sudden, what do the SSPX have now? A pope that cannot make bishops? And then that had to completely blow up with Francis. And then, of course, Prevost, who were ordained in the new rite. And of course, what would they say now? That we have a layman who's pope, who's not, which can be possible. A layman can certainly be the pope, but the holy orders have to follow that. And now he's making bishops and he's ordaining priests and all of that, which what are they going to say? That keeping track of all what is valid and invalid, it's a very sticky situation.
Yeah.
So
well, and I think that's part of why people don't make that step too. Like you said, part of it is because it is a complicated issue, and there are issues with sedevacantism. Of course, I think that's absolutely true. It is a very evil position, if you want to say it that way. I mean, it's ugly. It's gross. We want a pope, so it's not a good position. But I think again, it all comes back to that actual, the actual search for truth. But I think it's interesting too when you think about it, how as you said, the two latest supposed popes were not even properly ordained, and you think about that, it's like, well, how many graces from sacraments have they received in their lives? I mean, well, I guess they could have when they were children, but I mean in their adult lives maybe
I think
none.
that's one reason why the world is in absolute chaos. I
Yeah.
truly do. I think that is because there's so few actual sacraments and so little grace active and moving in the world today. Now, of course, Bergoglio said that the the spirit is blowing. One of his classic Bergoglianisms. Uh, so there's that too. Chris's question though: what is the best argument for the non-sadists who say there is no salvation outside the church? I know you should. So to me, it depends on who I'm talking with, because I think different people have different approaches. Some are a bit more hardlined in their Novus Ordo ways, like there's no salvation outside the church and you left it. Where there's others who are a bit more willing to hear you out. And I think that would be my first step, is just determining who my audience is, who am I speaking with. But then what they have to do is compare the documents at first, because once you're able to, I think it's very difficult to go on the offense here. Not that it's difficult, but you need to go on. You're better off here putting them on the defense. They need to show you that the documents of Vatican II are consistent with pre-Vatican II teaching. And as we know, there's resources out there, and if you'd like later on, I could put it in the comment section, where Vatican II does not teach this, that separated brethren, or those who are no longer united to us, can find means of salvation in those non-Catholic religions. So by applying Vatican II teachings to the current situation, well, then anybody can be saved. The dogma of extra ecclesiam nulla salus is truly out the window. It's why you don't hear them say it. When was the last time Bergoglio or Prevost or Ratzinger came out with the statements that you heard pre-Vatican II Pope say, that there is no, outside of this church, there is no salvation. Those who are not Catholic will perish in the flood. We are
Maybe
not a
against
church of...
sedevacantism, but otherwise,
yeah, yes, we are not a church of. I think it was Pope Innocent. We are not a church of heretics or schismatics. But outside of this one holy Roman Catholic Church, we declare and define that it is impossible to be saved. They don't say these things anymore because they don't believe them anymore, because they're not the teachings of the council. And Paul VI himself said that we need to shape this religion in the form of the conciliar church. That's a bit of a paraphrase, but if you Google those words, I'm sure you can find the actual citation. But they completely reshaped their theology. So when people ask me, well, you're a sedevacantist, you've left the church, there's no salvation outside of the church, well, then show me where your council and where your hierarchy and where your vicar of Christ teach that, because they don't. And it's very problematic. You can also respond, if you want to be a bit more offensive, you can respond simply by demonstrating that you have not left, that I have never left the church. I am baptized. I have a valid baptism. I never declared myself separate from the Catholic religion. I am a Catholic, and I profess all of the teachings and all of the dogmas and all of the doctrines of the Holy Roman Catholic Church and all of her councils up until the death of Pius XII, because there is that rupture that clearly took place there. So again, there's a few different ways you can approach that conversation, but I like to put the burden of proof on them by demonstrating the council that they're obliged to follow, of course, that says all of these things, these wonderful things about the Vatican II religion. And remember that public acts are just as important sometimes as what is written in a document. We see how these Vatican II hierarchs treat non-Catholics. There's no proselytization at all. There's no mission to convert any of them. Excuse me. Several of the Vatican II hierarchs said that.
yeah, Bergoglio, right?
It's
Stop
not
proselytizing.
right.
Yeah,
right. It's not there. So yes.
Well, and you think, I mean, you see this comment from Sadie Ann, and kind of saying that basic thing that Prevost is just a disciple of Bergoglio, and I think that's true. And it seemed like he may have been handpicked, actually. I mean, funny enough,
he certainly was.
I mean, he certainly was in tight. I mean, he was a part of the the Vatican posse, and I think so. It's not a crazy leap to believe that again he's just going to keep following along. And again, I think you've seen this, and you've seen it what he's done so far, and the bishops that he's elected, directed. I cannot find my words tonight, man. It's late, but
it's very late. It's very late.
That he's the bishops that he's appointed. There's the word, and I think that's he's going to continue what's been going on, and that's why again I'm just kind of flabbergasted with people who don't who not even just think that it's the status quo, but just think, yeah, this is better. This is going to be so much better. I'm so happy with where things are going with this. And it's like, and then they'll say one good thing. He's like, yeah, I stand for the Christians in Gaza, and it's like, okay, that's good. That's a good thing to say, but it's like, shouldn't he say that about a lot more things? I mean, it's like, why are we happy about one good thing he says? It's so pathetic. I'm sorry. It's
Bishop,
like you have a bunch of cheerleaders out there rather than people actually trying to be Catholic.
Bishop Sanborn said this in a recent sermon where he was like, the supposed vicar of Christ on earth reassured us that marriage is between a man and a woman, and this is supposed to be groundbreaking for us. It is so bad that the bare minimum is seen as authentic, deep, rich Catholicity across the board. We saw it with Francis, who would say something like, the unborn, their lives are valuable, and people would say, oh wow, look at how orthodox and he is. I used to think this. I used to cheer on. I remember when I was a very big Benedict fan. When Francis got elected, I was looking up things like what's his position on abortion, as if popes can teach contrary things on issues of unborn life, or what's his position on gay marriage, like, because I believe if I remember correctly, it was around the time when the Supreme Court issued gay marriage rulings across the country. That might have been 2015, so I believe it was just a year or two after his election. And thinking like, oh, what's he going to say on this? Like, I hope he doesn't favor them and all of those things. You really develop a poor, weak theology. All it takes is a few basic catechisms and a few basic review of what the church actually teaches on the power, the authority, the ruling of the Supreme Pontiff, where your theology begins to shift.
Well, and I think that if people go back to actual church teaching rather than listening to podcasts, I mean, again, I think it's just a crazy thing that for a while there with Bergoglio, and not as much so far with Prevost, but it probably will be eventually. You have the Pope splainers, right? Or not even the Pope splainers trying to defend him, but you could also have the Taylor Marshall types who are they're interpreting what you should listen to from the Pope, and it's just. As again, we talked about so many times on the show, that's pure insanity. And I think it would be so much better for exactly as you said, just go get the Baltimore Catechism, get the Catechism of Pius X. I mean, these things that will actually help you to actually learn the faith. And then if you do that, just learn the basics, then you can, kind of start looking at the Novus Ordo, at the SSPX, and start saying, okay, what makes sense and what doesn't, and I think that's something we actually want to do. I mean, kind of to plug a future show. We don't have a date set, but we're going to do at least one show, maybe a series of shows with 4 or 5 priests on a live show answering your questions. Not you, Matt, but the people watching answering questions.
So all 5 of you sit there and just ask questions all night.
Ask some good ones. Yeah, exactly. No pressure, Matt. They'll be answering the questions from the viewers, and the theme is pretty much back to basics. It's pretty much what is the Catholic Church? How do we know the Catholic Church is true? And I think again, these are things that I think that people just don't know, and there are plenty of these things that I don't know, man. I mean, and so I think these are things that are good to, at the very least, brush up on, especially when you have children. You start getting some pretty difficult questions. It's like, okay, I better brush up on this. While I had to tell my children is why do I believe my faith to be the real one, right? Because if it isn't, I had a priest one time say that if he found another religion to be true, then he would leave the Catholic Church immediately, right? So I think that makes sense. Of course, you're not in it because you're forced to be in it. You're in it because you believe it to be true. So in order to have that, you need to have the knowledge for it.
Yeah, and just some more of the comments here. There is quite a divide in the society. There are, in fact, there's the priest here at our the chapel here of the society. Was ordained by Archbishop Lefebvre, and those men are a bit more hardline than those who are fairly new, especially considering they're taking in a lot of Novus Ordo clergy that are just like, all right, you're SSPX now. people forget that there was a great divide, not only between the SSPX and Novus Ordo, but between the indult groups as well. I always laugh when I see people say, well, sometimes they go to the SSPX, sometimes they go to the Institute of Christ the King, sometimes to the Fraternity of St. Peter, as if this is all just one big buffet. Archbishop Lefebvre would have been horrified at these words because of what he considered them to be doing. People are just not well researched all of that much. I knew people at the SSPX who were probably borderline sedevacantists, and could list a million reasons why. And I knew people at the SSPX who didn't know all that much. They thought the Latin Mass was a pretty thing to see on Sundays. So, which I think is pretty fitting for a lot of these groups, but.
Right.
There is certainly a divide, and I've said this many times. The SSPX of today is not the SSPX of Archbishop Lefebvre, and I enjoyed Bishop Williamson the most. I remember being thoroughly, like, I hate to say disgusted, but maybe disappointed in Bishop Fillet's lack of leadership. What I thought, and very disappointing for me.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, if you continue to go away from, because we make fun of them sometimes, we call them Lefebvrists because they do kind of set him above.
Well, sure, he's their magisterium
in the church. Yes. He's like the magisterium, and it's like, well, you have that, but then they go farther and farther away from that. So the only thing they seem to keep is a certain layer of, recognize and resist, and it's like, they're the worst of both worlds. Sorry to listening, but that's just how I see it.
This is one thing that made me laugh, though, Kevin. You've never lived this, but you do not know how many times there were theological discussions or questions or just any general consensus, I guess you could say, about the Catholic faith. And people would say, what does the SSPX teach on this? What is the, I'm just going to say birth control or the rhythm method. What does the SSPX teach on this? As if they're the magisterium. The concept of what does the Catholic Church teach on this was somewhat non-existent. It is whatever the society says. That was the I lived that, and the more I think through and the more I talk things out, the more things realize made me open up my eyebrows. I would always see people just say, well, what is the SSPX position on such and such? Why would that mean much to me? I do think they're a little bit different from the indult groups. The indult groups, they're I think Father Cicada was right when he said these men, their silence is bought, because a lot of them, I knew indult priests in these FSSP, Institute of Christ the King groups, where they truly wanted to be authentically Catholic priest, but they had to keep their mouth shut because that meant a call to the bishop's office. Communion in the hand, for example. Now I know that's not in their charism to offer that at their liturgies, but if you were to ask one of them, is communion in the hand, is that permitted in their heart? They would say, no, absolutely not. No, that is a sacrilege. Publicly, they have to say, yes, it is, unless they be contradicting what their hierarchy is teaching them. They're in a very bad position. The SSPX has a bit more flexibility in that regard to say things that truly do need to be said. A lot of members of the SSPX, the clergy, have said, I would rather die than say the Novus Ordo Missae. Where in the indult groups, they encouraged attendance. If you were out and about and needed a mass, go to the Novus Ordo. It's fine. There's certainly it's not the sharp divide it once was, but there is a divide in my experience.
I just saw that today on Twitter that there's some diocese, the FSSP, they wanted them to, I guess, once a year or something, they're supposed to concelebrate all together with the Novus Ordo. I don't know if you saw that.
Yes, I did.
And they refused. I don't know where this was. And apparently because of that, I think the diocese came in hard. And I don't know if they shut them down, but they certainly
I believe they were I believe they were removed. I could be wrong, but I
think that's what I saw too. And they were kicked out because they said they didn't want to celebrate with the Novus Ordo. It's like, hey, good for them. As you say, at least sometimes, standing up.
But now they have to keep their mouth shut. So at what cost? Which is why Father Cicada is so prophetic in a lot of ways. Said that their silence is bought. How true that is. Shut up. Stop preaching the Catholic religion, or we will close you. I mean, very, 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 very sad. I'm not great at talking and reading at the same time.
Come on, man.
Especially
How long have you been doing this?
it's a bit. Have you ever tried the pretend you're a news anchor and read the teleprompter go by? I'm terrible at it. I would never make it as a news anchor. Anyway,
It is hard, and it's the hardest thing. I actually learned that in school. I went to broadcasting school, and the hardest thing is to do it naturally. So to do it like you're talking rather than I am
then to try
reading
to
the
say,
news. That's actually
yeah.
that's a skill, and that's something that I never really had the chance to perfect. But it'd be pretty cool. Yeah, it was funny because I was just thinking about that today, and I was just thinking about how they all have this certain way of reading, like this voice. You know what I mean? Like the news reporter voice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Sure.
the way they talk about everything. It's like they are going to tell you. You know, it's just
I
a
wonder who.
weird. I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's because of a teleprompter. But you know, like ESPN reporters, like especially women reporters, they all sound exactly the same, and
Yeah.
they say the same inflection, and they've been doing it for 20 years, and they all sound the same. There must be one
Mm.
school of ESPN female reporters. Anyway, sorry, I'm going off topic here, guys. Anyway, okay, so
Well, they
back to the
all learn the news
comments.
broadcast voice. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of hard.
exactly. It's strange.
Uh, for what Susie said here is correct. Just because liturgy might be valid doesn't mean it's pleasing. In fact, it was Aquinas who said that even man, I don't want to mess up the words, but a, a very general statement was that even if it's done validly, a sacrifice, maybe such as the SSPX, it has no merit to it at all because it's done in common with heretics. So it might be valid in the sense that it happened, but the grace or the merit along with it. If you give me a second, Kev, I could find that probably really quick. If you want to
Sure.
comment on one of the comments there, I'm going to look really quick because I can.
Yeah, it's
Take a
interesting.
minute.
It's a good conversation going on here between Susie, Sadie, and Matt, and it's yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those things that it's easy again for me. I was born a quote unquote sedevacantist. Don't love that word anyway, but I was born into that, so it's easy for me to judge and say, why can't people just see this? And it is a step by step process. It is something that is realizing what was taught before, what is the truth, what can and cannot be, and I think that if you come to that conclusion, that the Novus Ordo cannot be the church, that Pope cannot be the Pope. And then it also brings up the same issue, different issues with SSS with the SSPX, and one of those being, of course, that they resist the Pope, they resist the papacy, and that's not Catholic either. So again, you have these things where it's it doesn't fit. They may be valid, but now
Mhm.
we don't even know. We don't even know all of these SSPX priests are valid. So validity, licitness is also a thing. Catholicity, and again, your average person attending SSPX, maybe they don't know better, etc. And I completely understand that. But it's the people who have done their research and really looked into it. I think, yeah, I think you certainly should really, really consider, not going. I mean, I would certainly never go. I would advise everyone not to again, and partly again, yeah, because of the Una Cum issue as well. I mean, if you say mass in union with an apostate, that's a problem.
I think you and I differ a bit there, Kev. I think maybe you're a bit more lenient on it than I am. Um, but I did find here, so Aquinas, I don't have the actual source for this, but so St. Thomas Aquinas says that although priests separated from the unity of the church validly consecrate the Eucharist, quote, they nevertheless do not do this rightly, but rather sin when they do it. They therefore do not receive the fruit of their sacrifice, which is a spiritual sacrifice. The sacrifice is offered wrongly outside of the church. Hence, outside of the church, there can be no spiritual sacrifice. It is a true sacrifice with the truth of its fruit. In the Mass, the priest pronounces the prayers in the person of the church, in whose unity he remains. Consequently, if a priest who is separated from the unity of the church celebrates Mass, he does consecrate Christ's true body and blood because he has not lost the power of his holy orders, but because he is severed from the unity of the church, the prayers have no efficacy. I think that is a
Hmm,
very, very good applicable thing
interesting.
to the SSPX. Are they severed from the unity of the church? I would say yes. Are their priests valid? I would say yeah. Most yes, not all, but most yes. Are their liturgies and masses fruitful? I would argue no, they're not. And I'm not just citing Aquinas for that, but I think my position on this is that inserting the name of a false pope into the canon of the mass, so putting Leo the 14th's name in the Una Cum, the canon of the mass, is uniting the liturgy to the head of a non-Catholic religion, which makes your worship non-Catholic liturgy, which therefore, of course, just blows up the whole thing. I think and that's one thing too. I did the same thing, Matt. There was a list out there. There is a list out there of all the SSPX priests, and it lists their ordination date. You can Google this. It lists their ordination date by who, and there are some who will say, as of I don't know, say January of 2025, have not been conditionally ordained. In the SSPX here, I think there's 5 priests at the time at the retreat house, and one or two of them were not conditionally ordained, and I knew people who would not go to him, or I almost said him or her. did not go to him
Not
for
quite there yet.
confession. Yeah, not quite there yet. That's next year. Did not go to them for confession because they were like, oh, I don't know, he was ordained in the new rite. None of the SSPX bishops conditionally ordained them. We're going to stick with Father so and so, who we know is ordained by Fillet or Lefebvre or any of that. So yeah, but then that creates a sticky situation, because now what if the valid priest is saying mass and the hosts in the tabernacle are from the priest before, who is not validly consecrated, and you receive an invalid? It's an absolute mess. Scared me away. One of the 50 things that scared me away. I remember thinking I left that. Can I say with certainty that Leo the 14th isn't the Pope? Yes, absolutely. Yes. If I am certain that our Lord Jesus Christ founded the Holy Roman Catholic Church, then I am certain that Leo the 14th is not the Pope, because he is not. He cannot be one with Christ so long as he imposes the false Vatican II religion on the Church. That would be impossible. That would mean that Christ, our Lord, is imposing a false religion on the Church. That is called capital schism, when the Pope is not in communion with Christ. They're not one with each other. So if you are one with Leo the 14th, you cannot be in communion with Christ, because they're not in communion with one another. There's capital schism there. So if I believe that our blessed Lord and Savior Jesus Christ founded the Roman Catholic Church and is infallible in her councils, in her teachings, and his vicar is imposing the false Vatican II religion, then he cannot have the divine assistance. Therefore, he cannot be the Pope.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and again, another plug for a future show that we're working on with Louis Vrecchio on going in a deep dive into the Vatican II documents. So he is really truly one of the world's experts on the documents. He used to be an apologist for them, for Vatican II, and now, of course, he is not. And so we want to really cover that, because I think exactly as you say, it stems from that. You know, that they began a new church. You know, for one, you know, the church that subsists in. You know, there's so many of these different things. And like Father Dominic Radecki says it as this. He says, you know, there are 4 major heresies that come from Vatican II: modernism, false ecumenism, collegiality, and indifferentism. And these are things that, again, if you look into them a little bit and understand what they are and understand what the church taught before, you can understand that cannot be the same Catholic Church. The church cannot change its doctrines, and they were clearly changed after Vatican II. This is not only about the liturgy. Actually, the liturgy is one of the least important things in this case. You know what I mean? Because popes actually can change the liturgy.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, so I think that's what people always get wrong too. Is like, okay, it just has to be a Latin liturgy. Well, no, actually not. And so I think that for me, it is very clear. And I think if you look into the documents of Vatican II, compare them to what the church taught before, I think you might find that to be the case too. And this is a good question for you, Matt, because I think that this is why I hesitate a bit to start to condemn. You know, Una Cum is a really complicated issue. So I think with the SSPX, I am really clear. I wouldn't go anyway, even before this, even before they started to bring in priests who were not conditionally ordained. But that, to me, that was the point where it's like, okay, for sure that you cannot do that. These are priests and bishops who are not almost surely not valid, and so of course you cannot attend an SSPX unless maybe if you know the priest is valid. The Una Cum issue is a big issue, but it is a really complicated one. But if you talk to someone like Bishop Ivarunas, it will at least convince you that it's like, okay, it's not as simple as some people say it is. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, I see the pop-up you just put here. What about those who went to Una Cum? Yeah, so there's a great article on this. One of Bishop Sanborn's priests put it out. I studied this issue extensively a long time ago, and I forget a lot of the main points. But the main thing that I could say to that at this time here is that let's say a priest was about to offer mass, and and Pius XII died. It's October 9th, 1958, and Pius XII died. And so naturally we would not have a vicar of Christ to insert in the canon of Mass. But the priest doesn't know that. The word did not reach him yet that Pius XII had died. There truly is no pope, but he believes that Pius XII is pope. And so he puts the name of Pius XII in the canon of Mass. Does God strike him down for his grave error here of there being no pope, and he just said Pio in the name of the Mass? Of course not. That would be absolutely false. So John the 23rd, men in good faith, put his name and Paul VI before any heresy was apparent, before any of this was promulgated on the church. Were they false popes? Yes. But were they put in there with the intention, with the knowledge after this false religion was imposed on the church? No, they were not. It had not been made clear yet that these men were false. Nobody knew on October, whatever it was, 1958, that John the 23rd was a false pope. It took years. In fact, the questioning of Paul VI's validity took years. I hate the opinionist position of it was back then Archbishop Kelly, but they're trying to work through things, or Bishop Kelly, which they're trying to work through things, which I understand. But the maybe he's pope for me, but not for you, or not for you, but for me, is a very difficult position to kind of work through. And there's still opinionism around here today, and I think it's a dreadful, dreadful, dreadful plague. But anyway, for those who aren't sure, opinionism is a bit different from sedevacantism in the sense that, in my opinion, well, maybe not different, but they personally believe that, well, Francis or Leo is not the Pope, so I'm not going to insert his name into the canon of Mass, but he could be, like, maybe, like he might. So they're called opinionists. But there are articles explaining why it wouldn't have been wrong to say John the 23rd in the canon of Mass, or Paul VI. And again, it mostly centers around the fact that you do so in good faith, you do so with goodwill. You truly believe that he is the vicar of Christ, and there's no evidence contrary to that position yet. How could you ever have known? Whereas today, the heresies and the blasphemies are so rampant that it's quite obvious that it cannot come from the authority of Christ. So these things too are taken into account by God. I believe Father Dutitra wrote this article, so I can probably share that as well. A lot of good questions here, and they're explained quite thoroughly. So John the 23rd, he didn't promulgate the false religion on the church, right? I don't necessarily like, and I know Kevin and I have a little bit of a disagreement here. I don't necessarily like the fact that, oh, well, he was this or that, so he couldn't have been pope because of his personal things. I don't believe that these men are ever false popes because they are personally heretics. That the personal heresies of a pope, to me, do not concern us whatsoever. The church has not officially said what happens to a heretical pope. There's Bellarmine, there's Suarez, there's Cajetan, there's all of these things. The church is not definitively taught on this topic, but we do know for a fact that a false religion cannot be imposed with the authority of Christ. So John the 23rd consented to the beginning. So we know for a fact, without doubt, that Paul VI was not the Pope, because he's the one who officially promulgated the Vatican II documents. He promulgated them with the authority of Christ. He said that in the official promulgation statement that these are imposed and directed with the authority of Christ. And of course, they contain all of those heresies and blasphemies and errors in them, which could never have come from Christ. So he is certainly are without a doubt, yes. John the 23rd opened the council with the intention of exercising the extraordinary magisterium. Thomas Aquinas says, "He who consents to the beginning consents to the end." Therefore, we conclude that he would have imposed the documents with them. Therefore, his papacy was probably most likely invalid as well. He's certainly, in my opinion, not as clear cut as Paul VI. Certainly not as clear cut, but
yeah,
he was not the Pope either.
It's like Una Cum is kind of it's a pretty tough topic, and I think you get into the definition of heresy. You have, I think, you have manifest heresy. You have what is it? Private. I forget the terms.
A cult.
That's
it would be insane to say that a cult heretic lost the papacy. How would anybody know it?
Right, but a manifest heretic, I think, clearly makes sense, because I mean, if you are a manifest heretic, you cannot be a Catholic. Thus, you cannot be Pope. I think that's pretty logical. Now, the question is, was he that? I think that is kind of gray. I think that, a lot of people say he was a Freemason, which I think has a lot, of evidence. Which means, and if you are a Freemason, you are immediately excommunicated ipso facto. That's a long time teaching of the church as well. Right. So of course, then he could not be the Pope either.
I think it's important to say too that I don't think that these men are once the Pope and they're falling from the pontificate. I don't think anybody could you can't unpope the Pope. They would have to be non-popes to begin with. So we know that, as I said, Paul VI could not have been the Pope because he promulgated with the authority of Christ the false religion. It's not that he was the Pope and then all of a sudden he wasn't anymore. It's that he never was the Pope, because if he was truly the Pope, then he wouldn't have been able to do that. So sure.
There's a good question by Susie, and she asks, would it be reasonable to assume that John the 23rd was a false Pope, given what happened to Sister Lucia whilst he was in the Vatican?
She was done away with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. I mean, there's no proof in that because we don't actually know for sure what happened to her. But I think that's certainly there's something there. There's smoke, and I mean, where there's smoke, I'm sure there's fire. And I think that it is confusing. I mean, and again, it's like it is with sedevacantism, that there are these issues that are issues, and I think that unfortunately people. They don't, I don't know, sedevacantists we don't always agree. We don't always have the same opinions as you see now, but that's because, again, since 1958, or if you want to say 1961, we do not have a Pope. We have not had a Pope. So of course we have differing opinions.
People think controversy is bad. I forget the exact debate, but there was one between the Dominicans and the Jesuits, I believe, over the efficacy of actual grace in some sort of manner, and the two sides were going at it so hard and so bad that the Pope didn't weigh in on it. He said, both of you need to shut up, like stop. So there's always been this spirit of controversy in it. So I see the pasta. It's a great name, the pasta.
The pasta is one of our best.
I don't know why that's not my name. Yeah, I see that
all the time.
I do like angel hair. It's one of my favorite.
I make what I really light stuff.
I like it though. It's nice and thin. Let me see what they said. The hierarchy of Vatican II left the Catholic Church a while ago, but they are but Catholic and don't have the ability to elect someone as the Pope. All right, no comment.
We'll save the thesis for a different show.
I don't have much time.
Yeah, exactly. In the end, I mean, it is a very complex situation, a very horrible situation. We don't have our leader. We don't have, the mouthpiece of Christ. So I mean, of course, it's confusing. Of course, we have different opinions, and I think that, again, I think in the end, it is a response, right? Our position is a response to saying, okay, we know what can't be the Catholic Church, right? We say, we look at Rome and we say that cannot be. I cannot be a part of that. And I mean, just walk into a modern church and tell me, walk into a modern Novus Ordo church and just tell me, can that be Catholic? No.
The spotless bride of Christ.
Someone was sharing around on Twitter again that they had this meme where they put a Protestant what do they call it, Last Supper meal or whatever, and then they put a Novus Ordo Mass and they put them side by side and they look identical. Oh,
yeah, you can't tell which one is which one.
The services are very similar. And I mean, if you even just happen, unfortunately, to glance into a Novus Ordo service, you see that that's not Catholic. And I think, again, we are reacting to that and saying, okay, that can't be it. So what are the answers? And we don't have all of the answers, but what we do have is to say what Rome was. It's not a sinking ship. It is sunk. It is gone. It is at the bottom of the ocean, the hierarchy as it is now. They are not even remotely close to Catholic. And I think it's a good place to end. Let's end on a happy note. Sure. Everyone tell us in the comment section your favorite pastas. I think this it's going to make me hungry. And it's almost
fettuccine. I make a very good homemade fettuccine with flour, eggs, salt. Yes, and
Matt,
I don't
how
even.
Are you not married yet, Matt? Make your own.
I can
homemade
make my
fettuccine. Ladies, did you hear that? Any ladies out there?
My own. I don't even need a pasta machine. I roll it into fours, rolling pin, and then unroll it, and you have your very, very thin dough. Cut it with the knife.
Man, you gotta come
cut
visit
the table,
us. Make me some
and
pasta.
cook. My grandmother was a delight.
Oh man,
the generation.
Italian food is the best. I love it. I actually I really like stuffed. What are the stuffed noodles?
Stuffed noodles.
What are the stuffed with cheese? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, like a tortellini?
Yeah, like a tortellini.
Oh, yes. We
good.
do a cold tortellini salad. So you take the tortellini, you boil it, you put it in the fridge. It's cold. You can put olives, peppers, whatever you want, and a nice Italian dressing. But yeah, as Matt, I know I do have to run in a second here, but just a quick comment. Again, we would disagree. So Matt says the thesis of Delorier is the most compelling version. That's the what I espouse. And I would just answer refined canine. Again, Kevin and I would have different answers to this. But the bishops cannot get together to hold a conclave because they can't. They don't have the authority to do that. They don't have ordinary jurisdiction.
They certainly have more authority than heretic cardinals who
Kevin would give a very different answer, but we'll hold off. We'll hold off on that.
Let's talk about pasta rather than. Oh my gosh, conclave.
I do not like Alfredo sauce.
I sometimes do. Sometimes. What's the one that has like the bacon pieces in it? Like that's the only one. What is that called?
I know. It begins with carbonara.
Yeah, carbonara. That's pretty
good. Man, very, very good.
Yeah,
very, very good.
That.
I guess I should go make some.
Yeah, go do it. Go eat
some carbonara sauce.
I'm gonna go to bed. Now we appreciate all you guys who watched. The comment section was awesome today. Thank you all. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell. We will have more live shows coming. I'm going on vacation this week. I'm going to go do a 3-day
to Italy
in the Alps. Oh, that'd be nice. Yeah,
the Alps, son of music.
Yeah, gonna hike in the Alps. It's gonna be rainy though. It's gonna be a bit of a bummer, but it should be fun. But I won't be doing podcasts this week. This will be the last one this week. But then again, like I said, we have some shows coming up. We have one with Father Benedict coming up, also talking about papal encyclicals from Pope Leo XIII, which will be very nice to kind of again get some actual church teaching in here and have a good priest to explain them to us. And yeah, we have a lot coming up again, starting sometime next week. So make sure you guys subscribe, comment, like all of that stuff, and we will see you all next time.